Con gioia celebro per la prima volta l'Eucaristia in questa Basilica Lateranense, cattedrale di
Dear brothers and
Roma.
sisters, it's with joy that I'm celebrating the Eucharist for the first time in this Lateran Basilica, the Cathedral of the Bishop of Rome.
I vescovi ausiliari,
I greet all of you with great affection, the Cardinal Vicar, the auxiliary bishops, the diocesan presbyterate, the deacons, the men and women religious,
e tutti
and all the lay
i
faithful.
fedeli laici. Porgo anche i miei saluti al signore sindaco e alla sua
I
moglie.
also extend my greetings to the mayor.
Camminiamo insieme nella
Together,
luce
let us walk in the
del
light of the
Signore
risen
risorto.
Lord.
Celebriamo oggi la seconda domenica di Pasqua.
Today we are celebrating the second Sunday of Easter, also known
della Divina
as Divine
Misericordia.
Mercy Sunday.
Com'è bella questa
What a beautiful
realtà
truth of
della
faith
fede
this
per
is
la
for our
nostra vita.
lives,
La misericordia di Dio.
the mercy of God.
Un amore così grande.
God's love
così
for us
profondo,
is so great,
quello di Dio verso di noi.
so deep.
Un amore
It is
che
an
non
unfailing
viene
love,
meno, sempre afferra la
one which
nostra
always
mano,
takes us by the
ci
hand
sorregge, si
and
rialza,
supports us,
ci
lifts
guida.
us up, and leads us
Nel
on.
Vangelo d'oggi, l'Apostolo
In today's
Tommaso
Gospel, the Apostle
fa
Thomas
esperienza proprio della
personally
misericordia di Dio,
experiences the
che ha
mercy
un
of
volto
God,
concreto, quello di Gesù,
which has a
di
concrete
Gesù
face, the face of
risorto.
Jesus, the risen Jesus.
Tommaso non si fida di ciò che gli dicono gli altri apostoli.
Thomas does
Abbiamo
not believe
visto il
it
Signore.
when the other apostles
Non
tell
gli
him, "We have
basta la
seen the
promessa di
Lord."
Gesù che aveva annunziato il
It
terzo
isn't
giorno
enough for him that
risorgerò.
Jesus had foretold it or
Vuole
promised
vedere,
it.
vuole mettere la sua mano
On the
nel
third day I
segno
will
dei
rise. He
chiodi e
wants
nel
to see. He wants to
costato.
put his hand in the place of the nails in Jesus'
Qual è
side.
la reazione di Gesù?
And how does Jesus
La
react?
pazienza.
With patience.
Gesù non abbandona
Jesus
il
does not
testardo
abandon
Tommaso
Thomas
nella sua incredulità.
in his stubborn unbelief.
Gli dona una settimana di
He
tempo.
gives him a week's time.
Non chiude la porta.
He doesn't close the door.
Attende.
He waits.
E Tommaso,
And Thomas acknowledges his own poverty, his little faith.
la poca fede. Mio
My
Signore
Lord
e mio
and my
Dio.
God.
Con questa invocazione
With this
semplice,
simple yet
ma
faith-filled
piena di
invocation, he
fede,
responds
risponde
to
alla
Jesus'
pazienza di
patience.
Gesù. Si lascia
He lets
avvolgere
himself be
dalla
enveloped by
misericordia
divine
di
mercy.
Dio. La vede davanti a sé,
He sees it before
nelle
his
ferite
eyes,
delle
in
mani
the wounds
e
of
dei
Christ's
piedi,
hands and
nel
feet,
costato aperto,
and in his open
e
side,
ritrova la fiducia.
and he discovers
È un uomo
trust.
nuovo,
He is a new
non
man,
più incredulo,
no longer an unbeliever,
ma
but a
credente.
believer.
Ricordiamo anche Pietro.
Let's also remember Peter.
Per 3 volte,
For 3 times he
Rinega
denied
Gesù,
Jesus,
proprio quando
precisely
doveva
when he
essere
should have
più
been closest
vicino.
to him.
E quando tocca il fondo,
And when he hits bottom,
incontra lo
he
sguardo
meets the
di
gaze
Gesù
of
che,
Jesus, who
con
patiently,
pazienza, senza
wordlessly
parole,
says
gli
to
dice,
him,
Peetro,
"Peter,
non avere
don't be
paura
afraid
della
of your
tua
weakness.
debolezza, confida in me."
trust in me."
E Pietro
Peter
comprende,
understands,
sente lo
he
sguardo
feels the
d'amore
loving
di
gaze
Gesù
of Jesus,
e piange.
and he weeps.
Che bello
How
è
beautiful
questo
is this
sguardo
gaze
di
of
Gesù.
Jesus.
Quanta
How much
tenerezza.
tenderness is there.
Fratelli e sorelle,
Brothers and sisters,
non perdiamo mai
let
la
us never
fiducia
lose trust in the
nella
patience and mercy
misericordia
of God.
paziente di Dio. Pensiamo ai 2 discepoli di
Let's think too of the 2 disciples on the
un volto
road to
triste,
Emmaus.
un camminare vuoto,
Their sad
senza
faces,
speranza.
their barren journey, their
Ma
despair.
Gesù non li abbandona.
But Jesus does not
Percorre
abandon them.
insieme la strada
He
e
walks
non
beside them.
Con
And not only
pazienza
that,
spiega le
He
scritture
patiently
che si
opens the
riferivano
scriptures
a
which
lui
spoke of
e si
him,
ferma
and he
a
stays to
condividere
share a
con
meal
loro il
with them.
pasto. Questo è lo stile
This
di
is
Dio.
God's way of doing
Non è
things.
impaziente come
He's not
noi,
impatient like
che
us,
spesso
who
vogliamo
often want
tutto e
everything
subito,
all at once,
anche con le persone.
even in our dealings with other
Dio è
people.
paziente
God is
con noi
patient with us because He
perché ci
loves
ama.
us. And those
E
who
ci
love are
ama
able to
E
understand,
chi ama
to hope,
comprende,
to
spera,
inspire
dà
confidence.
fiducia,
They do not
non
give up.
abbandona,
They do not burn bridges. They are able to forgive. Let us remember this in our lives as Christians. God also waits for us even when we have left Him behind. He's never far from us, and if we return to Him, He is ready to embrace us. I'm always struck when I reread the parable of the merciful Father. It impresses me because it always gives me a great hope. Think of that younger son who was in the Father's house, who was loved, and yet he wants his part of the inheritance. He goes off, spends everything, hits rock bottom, where he could not be more distant from the Father. Yet when he is at his lowest, he misses the warmth of the Father's house, and he goes back. And the Father? Had he forgotten the Son? No, never. He is there. He sees the Son from afar. He was waiting for him every hour of every day. The Son was always in the Father's heart, even though he had left him, even though he had squandered his whole inheritance, his freedom. The Father, with patience, love, hope, and mercy, had never for a second stopped thinking about him. And as soon as he sees him still far off, he runs out to meet him and embraces him with tenderness, the tenderness of God, without a word of reproach. He's back. He's back to the Father's house. The Father embraces him with joy. God is always waiting for us. He never grows tired. Jesus shows us this merciful patience of God so that we can regain confidence. I think of Romano Guardini, who said that God responds to our weakness by His patience. And this is the reason for our confidence, the reason for our hope. It's a dialogue between our weakness and God's patience. This dialogue, which is so important, a dialogue of hope. I'd like to emphasize one other thing. God's patience has to call forth in us the courage to return to Him, however many mistakes and sins there may be in our life. Jesus tells Thomas to put his hand in the wounds of his hands and his feet, and in his side. We too can enter into the wounds of Jesus. We can actually touch Him. This happens every time that we receive the sacraments with faith. Saint Bernard, in a fine homily, says, "Through the wounds of Jesus, I can suck honey from the rock and oil from the flinty rock." I can taste and see the goodness of the Lord. It is there in the wounds of Jesus that we are truly secure, that we encounter the boundless love of His heart. Thomas understood this. Saint Bernard goes on to ask, what can I count on? On my own merits? No, my merit is God's mercy. I am by no means lacking merits as long as He is rich in mercy. If the mercies of the Lord are manifold, I too will abound in merits. This is important. The courage to trust in Jesus' mercy, to trust in His patience, to seek refuge always in the wounds of His love. Saint Bernard even states, "So what if my conscience gnaws at me for my many sins? Where sin has abounded, there grace has abounded all the more." Someone may think my sin is so great. I am as far from God as the younger son in the parable. My unbelief is like that of Thomas. I don't have the courage to go back, to believe that God can welcome me and that He's waiting for me of all people. But God is indeed waiting for you. He asks of you only the courage to go to Him. How many times in my own pastoral ministry have I heard it said, "Father, I have many sins." And I've always pleaded, don't be afraid to go to Him. He's waiting for you. He will take care of everything. We hear many offers from the world around us, but let us take up God's offer instead. His is a caress of love. For God, we are not numbers, we are important. Indeed, we are the most important thing to Him. Even if we are sinners, we are what is closest to His heart. Adam, after his sin, experiences shame. He feels naked. He senses the weight of what he has done. And yet God does not abandon him. If that moment of sin marks the beginning of his exile from God, there's already a promise of return, a possibility of return. God immediately asks Adam, "Where are you?" He seeks him out. Jesus took on our nakedness. He took upon Himself the shame of Adam, the nakedness of his sin, in order to wash away our sin. By His wounds we have been healed. Remember what St. Paul says. What shall I boast of, if not my weakness and my poverty? Precisely in feeling my sinfulness, in looking at my sins, I can see and encounter God's mercy, His love, and go to Him to receive forgiveness. In my own life, I've so often seen God's merciful countenance, His patience. I've also seen so many people find the courage to enter the wounds of Jesus by saying to Him, "Lord, I am here, accept my poverty. Hide my sin in your wounds. Wash it away with your blood." And I've always seen that God did just this. He accepted them, consoled them, cleanse them and love them. Dear brothers and sisters, let us be enveloped by the mercy of God. Let us trust in His patience, which always gives us more time. Let us find the courage to return to His house, to dwell in His loving wounds, allowing ourselves to be loved by Him and to encounter His mercy in the sacraments. We shall feel His tenderness. We will feel His embrace. And we too will become more capable of mercy, patience, forgiveness, and love.